The night of September 2, 1666, began like any other in London. The city's narrow streets were quiet, its timber-framed houses dark against the starlit sky. But in Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane, a small spark would ignite a catastrophe that would transform London forever. As the city slept, that spark grew into flames that would devour London for 5 terrifying days, reducing one of Europe's greatest cities to ashes, and marking one of history's most devastating urban disasters. This is the story of the Great Fire of London, a tale of destruction, courage, and rebirth that changed the face of a city and the lives of its people forever. London in 1666 was a powder keg waiting to explode. The city was densely packed with wooden buildings, their upper stories jutting out so close together that neighbors could shake hands across the street. The summer had been exceptionally hot and dry, turning the timber buildings into perfect kindling. Even the water wheels under London Bridge, crucial for pumping water to fight fires, were malfunctioning due to the Thames running low. In the heart of this tinderbox, Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane harbored the seeds of catastrophe. When Farriner checked his ovens that Saturday night, everything seemed normal. But somewhere in the bakery, embers continued to smolder. Around 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, smoke began seeping through the floorboards. By the time Farriner's family awoke, flames were already climbing the stairs. They barely escaped with their lives, though their maid became the fire's first victim, too afraid to jump from an upper window. At first, few worried. Fires were common in London, and the city had survived them before. Sir Thomas Bloodworth, the Lord Mayor, was awakened with news of the blaze but dismissed it with fatal complacency. His infamous words would haunt him forever: "Pish! A woman could piss it out." But this fire was different. Driven by a strong easterly wind, the flames spread rapidly through the maze of wooden buildings. The usual firefighting methods, creating fire breaks by demolishing buildings in the fire's path, were implemented too slowly and too cautiously. By dawn on Sunday, the fire had grown beyond control. The citizens of London watched in horror as their city began to burn. Samuel Pepys, whose diary provides one of our most vivid accounts of the disaster, climbed the Tower of All Hallows by the Tower Church and witnessed the terrifying spectacle. The fire was spreading with such fury that houses were being consumed almost before they could be emptied of their contents. As Monday dawned, panic gripped the city. People fled their homes, carrying whatever possessions they could save. The streets became clogged with carts and terrified citizens. Some buried their valuables, while others sought refuge in the fields outside the city walls. The wealthier citizens hired carts at extortionate prices, while the poor were forced to abandon everything they owned. The fire showed no mercy. It devoured everything in its path: homes, shops, warehouses, churches. St. Paul's Cathedral, then the largest church in Europe, was considered a safe haven. People stored their goods in its crypt, believing its stone walls would resist the flames. They were tragically wrong. On Tuesday, the fire reached St. Paul's. The cathedral's scaffolding, ironically erected for repairs, caught fire. The intense heat cracked the stone walls. The lead roof melted and poured down like rain. When the great cathedral finally collapsed, the sound was heard miles away. It was a moment that symbolized the seeming invincibility of the flames. The destruction unleashed dark elements of human nature. Rumors spread that the fire was an act of sabotage by French or Dutch enemies. Foreign residents were attacked in the streets. A simple-minded French watchmaker named Robert Hubert falsely confessed to starting the fire and was hanged, despite clear evidence of his innocence. But the disaster also brought out extraordinary acts of courage and leadership. King Charles II and his brother, the Duke of York, took personal command of firefighting efforts. They rode through the burning streets, organizing fire breaks and encouraging the citizens. Their presence helped prevent complete social breakdown. Finally, on Wednesday, the authorities took drastic action. Using gunpowder, they blew up houses to create wide fire breaks that the flames couldn't cross. The wind began to die down, and gradually, the fire's advance was checked. By Thursday morning, the Great Fire was largely under control, though it would smolder for months in cellars and warehouses. The cost was staggering. 4/5 of the city within the walls lay in ruins. Over 13,000 houses, 87 churches, and 44 company halls were destroyed. Remarkably, while thousands were left homeless, The official death toll was surprisingly low, perhaps as few as 6 people, though the true number was likely much higher. The aftermath revealed a scene of unprecedented devastation. The ruins were so hot that it was weeks before much of the area could be properly surveyed. Thousands of people lived in makeshift camps in the fields around London. The social fabric of the city had been torn apart. But from this devastation would rise a new London. Christopher Wren, who had been planning to renovate St. Paul's Cathedral before the fire, now had the opportunity to rebuild it entirely. His magnificent new cathedral, completed in 1711, remains one of London's most iconic landmarks. The rebuilding of London brought significant changes. New building regulations required houses to be built of brick or stone, not wood. Streets were widened, and building heights were regulated. These changes helped create the London we know today and established precedents for urban planning that would influence cities worldwide. But what caused this catastrophe? The immediate cause was clear: a baker's oven. But the underlying causes were more complex. London's medieval structure, with its narrow streets and wooden buildings, was a fire hazard waiting to happen. The hot, dry summer had created perfect conditions for a conflagration. The city's firefighting equipment was primitive, and the initial response was fatally slow. The Great Fire also occurred during a period of multiple crises. London was still recovering from the Great Plague of 1665, which had killed around 100,000 people. England was at war with the Dutch, creating panic about foreign sabotage. These factors contributed to the chaos and complicated the response to the fire. Let's look at some fascinating details often overlooked in this story. The fire was so intense that it created its own weather system. The heat caused a convection effect, creating strong winds that drove the flames forward and sent burning debris flying across fire breaks. The fire's impact on commerce was enormous. The destruction of warehouses along the Thames devastated London's trading capabilities. Thousands of tons of goods were lost, including vast quantities of sugar, which melted and flowed through the streets like lava. The insurance industry as we know it emerged from the ashes of the Great Fire. Nicholas Barbon established the first fire insurance company in 1681, and others followed. These companies maintained their own fire brigades, marking the beginning of organized firefighting in London. The fire changed more than just the city's architecture. It altered the very way people thought about urban planning and public safety. The idea that governments had a responsibility to regulate building standards and provide firefighting services gained traction across Europe. Samuel Pepys's diary provides invaluable insights into the human experience of the disaster. He describes burying his prized Parmesan cheese and wine in his garden to save them from the flames. Such personal details help us understand the very human reactions to catastrophe, both the practical and the seemingly absurd. The fire also had unexpected environmental impacts. The amounts of ash and debris were so vast that they had to be shipped to other parts of England as building material. Some of London's rubble ended up as far away as Russia, used as ballast in trading ships. The rebuilding of London was a massive undertaking that took decades. While some grand plans for a complete redesign of the city were rejected as impractical, the new London that emerged was significantly different from its medieval predecessor. The new buildings were more spacious and stable, the streets wider and better organized. Christopher Wren's new churches, built to replace those destroyed by the fire, gave London much of its distinctive skyline. Each church was different, showcasing Wren's architectural genius and providing unique landmarks that helped people navigate the city. The financial cost of the fire was enormous, estimated at around £10 million at the time, equivalent to billions today. But the long-term economic impact was complex. While the immediate effect was devastating, the rebuilding created jobs and stimulated the economy. New industries emerged, particularly in construction and insurance. The fire had profound social effects. Many poor residents couldn't afford to rebuild their homes to the new standards and were forced to move to new suburbs outside the city walls. This began a pattern of suburban development that would continue for centuries. The Great Fire also changed how Londoners viewed their relationship with the Thames. New regulations required better access to the river for firefighting, leading to the development of more organized wharves and quays. This helped London develop into one of the world's greatest ports. The disaster led to innovations in firefighting technology. New water pumps were developed, and fire posts with emergency equipment were established throughout the city. These improvements would save countless lives in future fires. Perhaps most importantly, the Great Fire changed how people thought about urban disasters. It showed that catastrophes could be prevented or mitigated through proper planning and regulation. This lesson would influence city planning and safety regulations for centuries to come. Today, markers of the Great Fire can still be found throughout London. The monument, designed by Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke, stands near Pudding Lane as a reminder of the catastrophe. At 202 feet tall, it stands exactly as far from Pudding Lane as it is high. Modern archaeologists continue to uncover evidence of the fire. Layers of burned material, melted glass, and scorched pottery tell the story of those terrible days in September 1666. These findings help us understand both the intensity of the fire and its impact on daily life. The Great Fire of London remains a powerful symbol of both destruction and renewal. It shows how disasters can lead to positive change, how communities can rebuild stronger than before, and how human ingenuity can rise to meet even the most devastating challenges. As we look at London today, with its strict building codes, professional fire services, and robust emergency planning, we can see the legacy of those 5 days in 1666. The Great Fire taught lessons that resonated far beyond its time and place, helping to shape the modern urban world. In the end, the Great Fire of London is more than just a story of destruction. It's a testament to human resilience, a catalyst for innovation, and a reminder that from the ashes of disaster can rise the foundations of progress. As London rebuilt, it didn't just recover, it reinvented itself, emerging stronger, safer, and ready to face the challenges of a new era.